So sometimes we talk about cooling systems or light bulbs or anything else, but today I thought I'd talk about camshafts. That's really nice, except that the camera on my laptop is the size of a pin needle, and its ability to show an entire camshaft at once is like really difficult. So here's the cam, and I'm trying to take a look at it. Now the camshaft is the main controller in the engine. It determines whether the engine runs clockwise or anti-clockwise. Can't do that in the B engine. You can't get a different cam run backwards because other stuff doesn't work. But some engines run clockwise, some run anti-clockwise. The camshaft, by its grind on each lobe, that determines whether the car runs best at 800, 8,000 RPM. It's the main controller. It lets the car run in a certain range where it'll give up the most power. From the gear, this is an MGB, and there's a gear here. On a midget 1500, I think maybe there's 2 gears. On a T-type, there's two gears. But anyway, this runs the oil pump and the distributor. The camshaft is oiled from the oil that runs down the push rods over the lifters and weeps onto the camshaft from above, and it gets splashed from all the oil that's whipping around inside the engine. It's well oiled. There are little oiler holes on the bottom of each of the connecting rods. Those do not point towards the cam. Those point away from the cam. Looks like they oil the cam, but there's only 4 rods and there's a lot of cam, so it wouldn't do a very good job anyway. But they oil the bottom of the pistons. They oil the wrist pins. So sometimes we take an engine apart and find the connecting rod in backwards. The camshaft in a twin cam engine is called a half speed shaft because it turns at half of engine speed. Half of engine speed. And you can tell because here you'll see that there's a nick. You see that shiny nick between those lobes? That's where the connecting rod was hitting it. The connecting rod runs extremely close to the cam. And once the rod bearings fail, very often that clack, 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 clack that you hear isn't the rod against the crankshaft, but the rod actually hitting the cam. So it hits it here. And if I turn it 180, you'll see it's marked up here also. So it hits it. If this was turning the same speed as the crank, there'd only be a hit on one side. So not only was it hitting there, but it was hitting up here between the 1 and 2 lobes. Gosh, this thing was really knackered. This came out of my daughter's 73 BGT engine, which was just an abomination of a rebuild. I'm not ever sure it ran once it was put together. So the thing that usually goes wrong with the cam, if something goes wrong with the cam, I mean, lots of stuff can go wrong, but usually it's a lobe that's worn. If you take a look at these lobes, it's hard to see here, but this guy's got quite an egg. Let me find a better one. This one, it's got quite a point on him. You know, he comes around and he rises up real quickly. He's got quite a point on him, and that point then wears away. So here on the number 4 lobe, it's all rusty. The number, let me see if I can get this up here. Number 4 lobe, which is this one. The top of the cam is worn away quite a lot, considerably. So the camshaft guys, whose goal it is to sell camshafts, tells you that if one lobe is worn more than 10 thousandths from another, that you should replace the cam. Maybe. But once it's worn considerably, like 100 thousandths, I mean, you can't get any kind of performance out of the car. And it doesn't show up easily. The compression looks perfect. You know, there's nothing wrong with the compression. It's just when you get up to higher speeds, depending on the amount of wear on the lobe, the car just hasn't got the power it should up at higher speed. So the way that I investigate this when I'm doing a tune-up, and it's a very coarse way of doing it, is you start the car up with the valve cover off, and all the valves are going up and down. So the lift on an MG camshaft is 265 thousandths. The workshop manual says 250, but it's not, it's 265. But it's a quarter of an inch. The rocker arm ratio is about 1 to 1.5. So it pushes it another half more. So the valve's opening 3/8 of an inch. You cannot see a difference of 10 or 20 or 30 thousandths. You can't, not when all the valves are operating. But if they're all doing this and one of them's just doing this, you know that there's a problem there, a horrible problem. The other thing is to take the lifters out of the side of the engine, and you might choose to do that if you got the cylinder head off and you think, well, I'll just take the lifters out and look at them. Just be prepared to buy a cam. No lifter looks perfect after it's run for thousands of miles, and then you're all nervous. Oh, should I change the cam or not? But if you can put a dial indicator on top of the push rod, get rid of the rocker shaft, get him out of the way, and just put a dial indicator on each of the 8 push rods and roll the engine 720 degrees and watch that cam open and close, measure it. The lift, they should all be consistent within 10 thousandths. I mean, it should be really, really nice. Sometimes the minor diameter and the major diameters change from cam lobe to cam lobe, depending if it's a reground cam or not. That doesn't make any difference. It only makes a difference what the difference is between the minor diameter and the major diameter, what the actual lift is. 1977, a lot of bad camshafts. I just talked to a guy with a 1980, and he said the cam lobe had run almost. He says it looked like it was just round. He couldn't even see there was any lift to it at all. There was, because this car would start and idle just fine, pass a compression test just fine, but wouldn't perform on the road. So the only way to find a bad cam, is to put a dial indicator on each push rod. Now that's a lot of work to do, and why would you do it unless you thought there was a problem? So take the valve cover off, start the car up, let it idle. If it idles for 20 minutes, you're going to get a spatter of oil on everything under the bonnet, of course. This is just oil's wicking around in there and getting tossed around, but you can do it for a couple of minutes without too much oil making its escape. Spot here, spot there, and just put your head on the front fender. Again, I'm talking about an MGB to a midget. Get squat down, take a look at a T-type, but just put your head there and just watch those valves moving, and just say, geez, is one of them moving more than another? If you're trying to adjust your valves and you adjust them all, say, I don't know, got a 1977 MGB, and you set them all at 13 thousandths and start the car up, tick, 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 one of them's noisy. You go, geez, I set them all at 13, there shouldn't be any ticky to it. So then you take a 10 thousandths feeler and you push that between the rocker and the valve stem while the engine's running, and see what happens with the noise. If it silences it up, but the valve lash is correct, 13 thousandths, cam's bad. Ugh, awful. Big project to change. But you don't have to take the whole engine out of the car. You have to take the radiator out. You have to take the front cover off the engine and slide the timing gears off. Of course, now you want to get a chain and a tensioner. You've got to take the rocker assembly off, take the push rods off, take the manifolding off, take the side covers off, and pull out all the lifters. You got to take the distributor drive gear out of the engine. You don't have to take the sump off, and you don't have to take the oil pump off, and you don't have to take the engine out of the car. You can do it right there. When you go to set it back up, whether you're setting up your engine in your car after a cam replacement or you're building an engine, it's essential, critical, to get the camshaft aligned with the crankshaft so that fully open, number one inlet, fully open, occurs wherever the camshaft manufacturer tells you it should be. Normally, factory-wise, your full open, number one inlet is full open at 110 degrees after top dead center. They all are. T-types, MGCs, they all are. Not twin cams, not V8s, I don't know anything about them for this discussion. But it's 110 degrees. But if you buy a replacement cam from, well, say David Anton at APT, APT Fast in California, he's got real nice cams. He'll tell you to time it at 104 degrees before top dead center. Well, how do you do that? Each tooth is worth a whole lot of 16 degrees or something per tooth. I mean, or 13. It's just dramatic. So how do you do that? Well, you can get an adjustable wheel up on the cam. Those are real expensive. They're really easy to use. Or you can get offset keys, and you figure out how far you're off. Say you're opening at 110 and you want to be open at 104, so you know you've got to move it ahead by 6 degrees. So you buy a 6-degree offset key and put it in, and it may be extremely close to 6, and that's as close as you can get. So there's a couple ways to take care of that, but timing is critical. MGs never jump time. Once I had a car that jumped time. I diagnosed it as that. I was incredulous. They'd never jumped time. Took the front timing cover off. It had not jumped time. There was something else going on. So never. In 50 years of working with MGs, I've never seen an MG jump time. I've seen the chains break. I've seen the timing gears collapse. I've seen all kinds of stuff. Tensioners all get torn up and messed up and chewed up. But I've never seen it jump time. So it just doesn't happen, and therefore it probably won't happen with you. I have a chart. I was going to try to get it up on a PowerPoint, but I didn't. I have a chart which lists 60 MG camshafts, all the way from 252 degrees duration, which is the factory setting, up to, I don't know, almost 340 or something if you want to run your car all day long at 8,000 RPM. And some of them are backed way off to I don't know, 180 degrees. If you've got some sort of B-series engine you're using in a stationary situation and you only want it to run at 800, but you want it to run at full power at 800. So there's a jillion different cams with all kinds of exciting names like road or rally or half race or 3/4 race. They're just names, just the same people that name cams named paint, you know. So it doesn't matter what the name says. What matters is what the duration is. 252 degrees is the normal factory, runs great, no problem with it, runs real well at idle. And then you start to push it. You go, well, I'll go to 260. I'll go to 270. I'll go to 280. There's a severe degradation of your ability to idle. And the car will idle just fine, but it's got to idle at 2,000 RPM. And if you want a car that's running around town, generally speaking, you don't want to have the idle up more than 10, you know, or it just sounds like it's sitting at the stop sign. It sounds like it's racing. Plus, it's still lumpy. Blah, 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 blah. You know, like some great big Corvette engine or something with an extreme cam. So you got to decide when you're buying a camshaft, where am I going to drive it? Am I going to drive it around town? Am I going to drive it on the racetrack? Am I going to drive it only on the expressway? Where do I want it to perform the best? Once you find where you want it to perform the best, you buy that cam, and then following that, decide what compression ratio you should have to go with your cam. The calculated compression ratio isn't that. It's a lot less. The true compression ratio in the engine. I mean, the inlet valve doesn't close until you're at 56 degrees after bottom dead center. So you should really start counting the compression ratio from there. The faster you want to go, the more quickly all this stuff has to happen, and the valve has to start opening sooner and closing later to get the air into the cylinder. So decide what kind of driving you're going to do and buy a cam from that. And then the cam guys will tell you, or you can go and talk to me and I can tell you what kind of compression ratio to run. If you've got an aluminum cylinder head, you can get the compression ratio up another whole point without a problem, because that head cools so nicely and you don't end up with any pre-ignition. So this is the cam. This is the camshaft, and they all look very remarkably the same. You know, there's a front bearing and a center bearing and a rear bearing, and a gear to drive the stuff, and then 8 individual lobes on the cam. When you assemble it, you always make sure that you have lots and lots of pasty zinc ZDDP to put on the bottom of the lifters. And when I put a new cam in, I start the engine up. First of all, I back off the rockers to about 30 thousandths, just huge gap, just real fast, just 30, 35 thousandths. And then start the engine up, bring the RPM up to about 2,000, and just let it sit there and idle for about, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes. During that time, the lifters and the push rods are all spinning, no small valve lashes keeping them from being absolutely free to rotate. And it's that initial wear in that you get in the first 20 or 30 minutes that determines how long the cam is going to last in your car. So that's what I got to say about cams. But if you've got some questions, you can unmute yourself and we can talk about cams. And then as soon as we're done talking about the cams, we'll go into the chat section and catch the people there who've got questions. We've got 177 on right now. So, oh, I use my cheat now. I used to have a dial caliper, but I've got a digital caliper now, and I just measured the cam lobes on these just before I started.
Hey, John.
Yes.
Yeah, why do you have to take the rocker arms off just to measure the lift of the cams? Can't you pull the valve cover and just do a measurement of what turn the engine over slowly and measure?
So what are you going to measure with? And you're down, you want to measure thousandths of an inch.
Right.
So you've got a dial indicator with a magnetic base.
Yep.
And you put it on the side, and where do you put it on this rough cast rocker? Where do you put it on the valve? You could do the valve too. You're looking for consistency, but the top of the valve is like this, and as soon as you put a pin on here and start moving, it's going to slip. My experience, and okay. It's easy enough. You take the front and rear rockers off. There's a pin. There's a pin, and you pull the pin out, and there's a washer and a spring. You pull those rockers off. This is after backing them all off and turning the engine over so that that valve is not depressed. And then you can move all the other 6 towards each other and turn them vertically. You don't have to take the rocker assembly off. You can just turn all the rockers vertically, except the handles when you take off. And then you've got a place to put the dial indicator. But there isn't a really good wide enough spot for the dial indicator to keep it from tipping. You try, see what you can do. But if it jiggles, then you've lost your precision, and that's what you're after. So I take the I take the spark plugs out, so there's no chance of getting too much, just accidentally moving the engine and getting compression. Then I just take the valve assembly off, the rockers, the whole work. I mean, the pedestals, the whole works. Just take them off. You can turn the engine over by hand. Then with the spark plugs out, you're not putting any stress on the cylinder heads or anything, on the studs or the gasket. And then when you put it all back together, go ahead and do your normal helical spiral, or your spiral torque, and pull it all back down.
Okay.
So John,
Yes.
when you're doing all those cam adjustments and measurements, isn't it about the time to do the rocker assembly too? Because isn't that probably going to be as worn as everything in the cam assembly?
It sure can be. Sure can be. You can buy a new rocker shaft, and it's the shaft that wears. It's not the brass bushings inside the rockers. The shaft wears more, and the underside of the rockers wear, and you can have those surfaced if you can find a machine shop that can still surface them.
Yeah.
Glenn's MG service in St. Petersburg had to buy a machine because his machine shop no longer could surface rockers. Oh my gosh. That's just in St. Pete. There's other places where there's wonderful machine shop support. Yes.
And what about the cam bearings themselves? I did an engine a while back where there's huge pitting in the camshaft bearings, mostly on only one, but it was like, I don't know if it's from acid oil or from sitting for a long time, but there was just huge gaps in the surface of the camshaft bearing.
Well, that if I were doing it, I'd tell the owner, look, I can put the cam back in and we don't have to change my estimated price. But if you take the engine out, put cam bearings in, it's another $4,000. What do you want to do? And I know what he'll say,
Yeah. Well, I had to replace all the bearings because
oh my gosh.
I couldn't run it that way.
We have some more camshaft comments.
Yeah, John, I just I just had my engine rebuilt, and I asked for the guy to give me a performance cam, but not a race cam. Just want a cam, I guess, is the best way to. It's called a performance cam, and it's set up station at 0.050, 225 degrees. Intake opens at 8, closes at 56. Exhaust opens at 50, closes at 28. 0.283 lobe, center 8 degrees. Intake valve lash 0.04.
What's the full open? What's the degrees after top dead center for full open? Is that on your chart? The 110, 104, 106, somewhere in there.
Yeah, he's just I'm just reading the label off of what came in the box with the cam.
Okay,
so it just says.
Where did the cam come from?
Good question, my guy. We're here in Marietta, which is not too far from that Riverside cam guy.
Okay.
But I'm not sure where he got it. I trusted him. He was a mechanic for an import auto place in Port Beach. He used to work with bags and MGs and Triumphs and stuff.
Well, the real critical feature from here on out, assuming that he got it timed correctly and everything, is what the manufacturer suggests you use for an inlet lash on your rockers and the exhaust lash. Originally, our original cams, they're the 252 degree cams in the MGB. The valve lash was 15 thousandths until they got the bucket lifters and longer push rods at the introduction of the 18V engine in 1972, and then the valve lash goes to 13. But I know on some of the cams, they want you to set the inlet valve 18 and the exhaust valve at 22 or something. So that's the critical thing you have to read from all the information that you've got.
Very good. Yeah, there's a part number on this 671 KBN.
Well, tomorrow, if you want to call me, I can look it up and see if it's on my chart. I updated my chart probably last time about, I don't know, 10 years ago. I know there's other cam grinds out there now. So. Okay, give me a jingle tomorrow. We can keep going on that. Do I have any more questions about camshafts?
Yeah, John, I have a question for you.
Sure.
What I'd like you to discuss is the lifters. I've taken engines apart and you look at the surface that the lifter is going to run on the lobe of a cam, and some of them are really pitted and deteriorated, yet the cam lobe itself doesn't look that bad. What is the cause of that pitting on the lifter? And what does that mean for you in terms of the camshaft itself?
Usually it means the cam's worn. It's hard for one side to wear and not the other, but better the lifter to wear than the cam because the lifter is really easy to change. So all lifters, no matter what engine you've got, if you take them out, there's going to be some faulty stuff, and you don't know the condition of the cam until you put a lifter and a push rod back in there and put a dial indicator on it and turn it around and see what your overall lift is and if it's consistent within 10 thousandths or so of the other lifts. The reason that the lifter gets worn more is it's softer, apparently, maybe by design, maybe by accident, but it's a better thing for it to go. They're case hardened, flame hardened, I think, or maybe some of them are electrically hardened, but turned up really, really hot and then precision ground. And that case hardening is only so thick. So once it starts to go through, like in the enamel on your teeth, once you're through it, then then it wears out very, very quickly after that and starts chipping up. So,
okay, I've seen machine shops where they'll take the lifters and actually surface them to get them looking smooth again. But I wondered how that would ever work if you ground away the hardening.
if you ground away the hardening, how would that work?
Yeah, it didn't make sense to me. Thank you.
You're
Hey,
welcome.
John,
Yes.
talk about nitrided lifters.
So there are lots of different ways to harden metal, and one of them is the introduction of nitrogen somehow in the casting process or in the hardening process. So those are called nitrided. And the TF 1500 crankshafts were nitrided during production, which is why they warn you only turn it 20 thousandths. Well, you got to turn it 40 thousandths to get bearings to fit. You just turn it 40. It's the same as a TD crank then. But the case hardening only goes so deep, and it's because of the nitrogen. So there are different ways of hardening metal, and there's a number. There's a machine that puts a point into the metal and records how much force it takes to move that point, thousandth of an inch into the metal. I don't know. And that tells you the hardness of the metal. The harder the metal, the more brittle it gets, usually. So, is that what you're looking for, Fred?
Well, I'm just saying, like a APT, and I think Moss sells them too. They sell these uprated lifters, usually the bucket style, that are nitrided, which are supposed to last longer or whatever.
I've seen those, yeah. And then you're supposed to fit the cams and the lifters as a package. But again, if the lifters are harder than the cam, and something's going to wear, then the cam starts to wear. Better to have the lifters wear, but better to have nothing wear. And at this stage, with the amount of miles that anybody gets on their car, it isn't going to be probably isn't going to be an issue anyway. So. Any more yes.
Yeah, Gerald Dalton, Louisville, Kentucky, 75 MGB. More of a comment than anything else. When I had 138,000 miles on the car, I noticed it wasn't idling well and so forth. So I pulled it down. I lost 35 thousandths lift on the cams itself. Decided to do an engine rebuild. and ended up having to bore the cylinders 2 sizes over because they had a taper in them. And at the time, this has been almost 30 years ago, there were not a lot of cams to pick from. And I ended up with a crane cam. I was trying to look for the cam card today, but I couldn't find it. But it seems to me like it had like a 419 lift. And I distinctly remember that I needed a 7-degree offset keyway, and nobody had anything available at the time. Everybody was out and so forth. So I worked for Ford Motor Company and went into the tool maker and said, "Can you make me an offset keyway 7 degrees?" And he said, "Sure." So anyway, he charged me a beer, and I went home, put it back together, and here we are. The car's got 180,000 miles on it, and it still runs perfect.
Hey,
The valve lash on that was 14 and 16 intake and exhaust, so they did step up the valve lash on that. But anyway,
Okay.
that, and I've been running a good oil with a lot of zinc in it and so forth. For flat taps, because a lot of the new oils now are not, they're formulated. All the cars now come with roller cams, and
Right.
they removed a lot of that zinc because the manufacturers were having to be liable for the catalytic converters, and they figured out that's what was going on.
Yeah, and in the Castrol G.
The molly disulfide, I think. And manufacturers did not want to pay for that, so they conned the oil companies into reducing that.
I'm getting some difficulty off your microphone, Gerald. You're
I'm not an oil
you're
man,
not
but
close enough or something.
I think I don't know what's going on here.
Okay,
Anyway, that's the extent of my comment there. So
thanks. Thank you very much. Any other comments about camshafts?
I have a question, John.
Yes, sir.
I have an 80 MGB that has a rebuilt engine in it, was in when I bought it, and I was told that it has a stage 1 cam in it, whatever that is.
Whatever that is.
Yes. Are there spec sheets or something that would tell me what settings to make between a stock cam and a stage 1 and all that kind of stuff? Is there something printable that I can look at? Because I've adjusted it based on what the manual says, and now hearing what you guys are talking about, it could possibly be that my 13 thousandths valve adjustment might not be correct for that so-called stage 1 cam. I mean, it runs really good and all like that, but I'm just curious now whether or not it's right.
If it runs well and it's been running okay, Triumphs run a real tiny valve lash. They run 10,000, not tiny, but they run like a 10,000 valve lash. BMC stuff runs a much larger valve lash. The MGA twin cam runs 2 or 3 thousandths because there's no rocker. As long as the valve closes, as long as it closes, there's no prohibition to it closing, which is inherent in that 13 thousandths figure, you're doing okay. It might run better. It might run better if you change the valve lash by a couple thousandths, but I doubt it. That's not, I mean, that's the thickness of a human hair. I just can't believe that you're going to notice anything different in the way that you run your car. So I think what you're doing right now is just fine. I do, and Joe Huffaker came up with those stages. If that is even what unless it's just the marketing guys at the cam company, stage 1. Sounds good. But I do have the Joe Huffaker race stuff. And I think that's in the back of the Bentley manual. If you've got a Bentley reprint, somebody's got a Bentley reprint, I bet there's a stage 1 in there. That's a real British terminology, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. And it was stuff the factory said, if you do this in this order, then you can extract this many more horsepower out of your engine. It was just a formula, it was tried and tested.
All right, well, I also believe if it isn't broke, you don't fix it. So I left it at 13.
Okay.
And like I said, it runs really well. I don't have any issues with anything, but I just want to make sure I don't have something set incorrectly that I'm going to cause problems down the road, because I didn't buy this thing to continually work on it, although that's what MGs are. But I mean, I just drive the heck out of it and have a great time, and I want to keep doing that. So,
You just keep it at 13, keep it checked, and you'll be just great.
yeah. All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Any more comments about camshafts?
Yeah, I got a comment. John, this is Barney.
Barney,
Have I got too much background noise here? Just holler and I'll shut up and go hibernate.
there's a lot of background noise. We just speak up and yeah.
Okay, I got it. I've been looking at camshafts a lot in recent years, and in the last several years in particular, every time I can get my hands on a used camshaft, I measure the cam lobes. And I have a casual observation and a guess at what's causing it. But I'm always measuring worn camshafts with undersized cam lobes that are worn down at least a little bit, sometimes a lot. And what I'm finding is the front 4 cam lobes, 1 through 4, the first 2 cylinders, are sometimes pretty badly worn. I find 3 out of 4 of the first lobes are worn down. But the rear lobes, for the last 2 cylinders, the last 4 lobes are not worn at all, or very little. So the majority of the wear ends up on the front end, the front half of the camshaft. Real odd. I'm sure this is going to take everybody by surprise. And I think the reason is because we have this draft ventilation system for the crankcase with a draft pipe on the front tappet cover. And there's been some apparent revelation in the last few years that the airflow flows in the opposite direction than most people are used to thinking. Everybody thought airflow went into the air cleaner, into the valve cover, through the crankcase, out the draft pipe, down to the ground. But apparently it can go the other direction because of a vacuum inside the air cleaner, especially when the car is standing still. And the draft pipe is a little bit too high at the bottom end. It's hiding behind the front suspension cross member. And we've got some videos on this where they got little bits of yarn. And when they're driving down the road, the yarn is actually sucked up into the draft pipe, indicating the air is going the opposite direction. So I got this theory that there's a bunch of road dirt getting up the draft pipe and getting into the front tappet chamber, and that's causing excess wear on the front tappets, the first 4.
Interesting. That shouldn't occur then after the introduction of the 18GB engine, which has got a great huge front oil separator with all kinds of steel wool, choroboy kind of stuff in there. So that's interesting. Another reason could be because of the angle of the engine. Is the engine angled back at all? Does the oil want to move? The oil that drips off the #1 rocker, does that go into the #1 hole, or does that end up going back into 3 and 4 and 2 into 3 and 4? Is that possible?
Oil is fed to the rocker shaft from the rear pedestal from there forward. And if you got one that doesn't have a lot of oil flow, or it sits a lot between each time you start it, it gets oiled at the back first and the front last, and that may have something to do with it.
Interesting.
So I've been measuring primarily MGAs and early MGB, the 3 main bearing engines. So yeah, the later ones, when they got positive crankcase ventilation should always go the other way, so there should be no road dirt introduced.
Interesting. Be interesting to talk to a camshaft manufacturer and find out. Webcam used to do a lot of cams for us, reground cams. I haven't talked to them in 25 years. Interesting. Thanks, Barney.
I've measured a lot of MGA camshafts in the last several years. It's very consistent. There's almost no wear on the last half of the cam.
Okay, I believe you. Any other comments about camshafts? Well, then since there's none, we'll get into our chat.
Wait a minute, John.
Yes.
This is Judd.
Yeah.
Judd with the defective camera still. TD Judd. Is it a camshaft change? What caused the TD to change the valve lash from, I think it's from 19 to 12? And does it really make that much difference? Was it, and is this I don't even know if that's a camshaft question.
Well, sure it is, and it must be the shape of the the lobe on the cam that's calling for the 19 or the 12. So my story, I told it here before, not that long ago, about the guy that called me really early on in my MG career. Must have been like 1983, something like that. And this guy calls me up from Maine. He said he bought a TC new in 1949, but he hates driving it because the valve lash is so clattery. It just drives him nuts. And I said, well, set the valves to 15. He says, but it says set them at 19. I said, dude, you called me, set it at 15. And like 2 days later, he calls me up and he said, oh my God, I love driving my car. It doesn't make any noise anymore, not that clatter. And I just can't believe that the thickness of a human hair, which is 3,000 or so, depends on what kind of human you're talking about, but anywhere from 2 to 4,000. That's really going to make a difference in how the car runs. So I always set T-types. Always I default to 15 on a T-type. I know TF say 12, but I always default to 15.
I kind of go there since I'm not positive, since I've got a bastardized 53 block and an early something head. I don't know if that makes any difference or not. So I just split the difference and go with it. But I just wondered if there was anything with that. Of course, now since I destroyed the damn thing, I've got one of Lynn's roller cams in there, and I don't even know what the deal is on that.
Yeah, I
It
don't.
was like a bat out of hell.
I don't. There are 2 D words that come with cam, unless you're dealing with delta cams. I suppose then there's 3. There is duration and there's dwell. And dwell is how long the cam stays open. And with a roller cam, it pops open like infinitely quickly, stays open and then closes. A normal, you map a normal cam and it's a bell curve. It's following a bell curve. It's steep. It's steep, climbs and then falls away. But the roller cam comes up, stays open, and then falls again. I don't. Len Finelli is the man on that. If you get a T-type, Len Finelli, he's the cam guy, and everybody raves about Len Finelli's cams. But I don't know anything about them.
It wasn't too hard to put in, and I've got about 5,000 miles on it, and it's running like a top.
Very, very nice. All right, we're going to go to the chat section now, but let me make another pitch to go on my website and find the little PayPal button that says Help John Porter's Retirement and push that now. I appreciate it. And I do write thank you letters in groups. I haven't written one in a while. I apologize, but I do read your name. I do appreciate your contribution. So let's go over to chat here and see what's going on tonight on the chat section. And again, if you have a comment or a question, you can just break in. So, all right, Wayne, in SLO, where's SL? Salt Lake? No, not Salt Lake City. Where's SLO, Wayne?
California, the West Central Coast.
Okay, all right. How do I set the timing at 32 degrees? The timing marks only go up to 20 degrees. Isn't that cruel? Come on, dude. What would it cost to put another couple more, another like 3 marks on there, and it would have been so friggin' easy. So there's 2 ways to do this. One is you get a dial back timing light. You set it at 32 degrees, and then when you time it, what it looks like is that you're at top dead center when you're looking at your marks on your front cover. And you can get a dial back timing light. It's still at the big auto parts stores, Napa, Pet Boys, those kinds of places, O'Reilly's. Although the kid that hands it to you will kind of look questioningly about what it is that he's selling and what it is you're going to do with it. The last one I bought had an inch of dust on it in a blister pack, but you can get them for, I don't know, 70 to $100. And then of course you can always go to Harbor Freight and buy one less. But let's say that you don't want to do that, that you want to do it with your normal timing light that just flashes when the spark comes, like old-fashioned timing lights used to be. So now the timing mark on your front pulley isn't in the right place. So roll the engine around by hand until you are at 12 degrees before top dead center. Take a paint stick or white out, or I don't know, your daughter's nail polish, something or other, make a new mark on the front pulley right there opposite the 0 mark, which is now 12 degrees in front of the old mark. So the old mark is the original mark, the mark cut into the pulley sitting at 12 degrees before top dead center. And the new mark you've marked opposite the 0, which is the last mark in a clockwise direction, the mark at 11 o'clock. Now you start the car up and you adjust it, vacuum disconnected, at full mechanical advance, up around 3,000 or 4,000 RPM, it's screaming, so that this new mark is opposite the 20 mark on the front pulley, on the front cover, which is the first mark you come to. Therefore, 20 plus 12 equals 32. So that's a way to do it.
That's pretty simple.
What year model do you have?
70.
70. Oh yeah, you don't even have those marks. You got marks on the bottom.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this is even more complicated. I was thinking you had somehow, I was imagining you had 18B engine. You got to use a dial back timing light. The other way you can do it, if you take the distributor out of the car and take the plate off the distributor, we're getting complicated here, but you know, you got to set the points up again when you put it back together. You look down at the finger on the cam inside the distributor, and it'll be stamped with a number. And it might be 12 or 13 or 14 or 19. It might stamp with a number. That number is the number of degrees that distributor advances. So you take that number, let's say it's 12. Let's just say it's 12. And you double it because the distributor is going at half speed, it's going at cam speed. You subtract that from 32. So because it's 12, you've doubled it, it's 24. Subtract 24 from 32 and you get 8 degrees, and you can static time it with a 12-volt test light, not running, static, at 8 degrees before top dead center, because 8 plus 24 equals 32. There's a couple ways to do this, but timing is critical. It really, really is critical. I go back to a seminar that Carl Heidemann and I had, tuning for speed, and we had a guy drive from Hershey, Pennsylvania, 800 miles away, drove his MGB 67B. We brought it to the shop, and the first day of how to make my car go fast is learning how to make it go as fast as it possibly can in its present configuration. Just tune it correctly. See if you're happy with that before you go for all the add-on parts. So we checked his timing and found it at 27 degrees before top dead center. Okay, he'd been driving it like that all the way out from Hershey, PA. Ran great. So I changed it to 32. The next day we went to a dynamometer and we put his car on the dyno and revved the thing up, and it turned out he was getting at the maximum 62 horsepower at the rear wheels. Is that all? Yes, that's all. That's real good for a B. So, or normal, 62 horsepower at the rear wheels. We turned the timing back to 27 where he had it before. We lost 5 horsepower with 5 degrees of dwell of timing. 5 horsepower for 5 degrees. So it isn't something you fiddle with. It's something that you set at 32, and it's a real number. So set it static, set it with a dial back light. Those are your 2 options when the timing marks are down there at the bottom. And if you ever have the option of rebuilding your engine when that time comes, doesn't matter if it's an MGA engine or a 71 or anything, get a modern pulley, harmonic pulley, it's better for the engine anyway, and get a timing cover with the timing marks up on top. I hope they paid that guy $1 million in 1972 finally they got the timing marks on top. It's like, why wouldn't they have done that so many years before? But anyway, you're stuck with, I think you got 4 marks underneath on yours, 71. So you can get to 5, 10, 15, about 15 degrees. And that's not enough to you could try to make a new mark, try it both ways, but dicey. Hope that helps.
Thank you.
Long answer.
Hey, John. It's
Yes.
Don Bartley from Valparaiso.
Yes, sir.
I saw you yesterday. You remember?
Yeah.
Okay. While I was at the Chicago show, the Chicago MG Club, they got a barn find. I think maybe somebody was deceased and the family gave parts to them. And I purchased a 1275 from the club, basically. And it was all taken apart. It had a lot of the engine work done to it already. The block had been boiled and new freeze plugs and shaved and brand new head, all reworked. And the camshaft was there with it, and it cleaned up nicely. It wasn't in bad shape, and it cleaned up, and it looks beautiful. There's no any kind of grooves or marks on it at all. My big concern is it the stock cam, or is it? I have no way of knowing the lift, the duration, the dwell or anything on that cam. Is there a way to test any of that on the bench?
Boy, it's tough. You almost have to put it in the block,
Yeah.
and then put a degree wheel on the front and figure out what's going on. Since you don't know what's going on, you might just say, you know what, I'll put it in at 100, just with a real key, double check it at 110, full open, and just go with it. Although it's a terror to change on a midget in place.
As long as I have your audience real quick, if anybody in the Chicago Club is listening and they have any information on that they'd like to share with me, they may be a buddy of the guy that had that, going on and may know something about it, and they could help me. I'd appreciate it for, reach out to me, be great.
If someone does, you can reach out to me, and in turn, I'll reach out to Don. So
yeah, because it looks beautiful. The cam looks perfect.
Nice.
Yeah, it looks real nice. Oh, thank you, John.
You're welcome. All right, my next question is Greg, dial back timing light. Okay, that must have to do with that first one. From Bill Reeves to everybody. John, how do you remove the body side molding for my MGB? Front fender, 1978 MGB. And you're calling from Warren, Michigan. Are you on right now?
Yes. Hi, John. Bill from Warren.
Yeah.
How are you doing today?
The chrome strips are held on with just snaps, and all you need is like a paint scraper, a thin paint scraper to go up from underneath and just turn it just a bit, and it'll pop it off the buttons. But at the front of the front chrome strip, the center of the center, which is the door, and at the rear of the rear, there's a little rectangular piece that slips into the chrome strip with a 1032 threaded stud on it, and there's a nut on the back side. So you feel right at the very front of the chrome strip up by the headlamp bucket, feel in there, and you'll find a nut. And your job then is to unscrew that nut. Since it's a 78 and that makes it pretty old, it may be that once you find it, you squirt it down some WD-40 first. That's an idea. And then it's either a 5/16 or a 3/8 nut, probably a 5/16 nut back there on that 1032. It's a 2BA thread, so it's really a 2BA fastener, but 5/16 socket will fit it. So unscrew that. The front of the chrome strip will just pop loose then, and you can get your paint scraper up underneath there and just slide it back and turn it a little bit, and it'll pop right off those studs without damaging the chrome strip.
I see when you open up the door of the car in the backside, I can see the nut in there. So that much I found already, but I wasn't sure how to get the body side moldings off there without damaging the strip. I want to get it off and hammer it out. I guess it suffered some door damage over the years. And I want to kind of hammer it out, straighten it up and buff it up a little bit and put it back on again.
It'll be taxing to hammer it out. You need a die. You got to take a real piece of hardwood and put that same cut into it using a Dremel or something or other, you know, for at least a couple inches long, and then lay that thing in there. And then better to have a complementary piece that's also curved and put that on top and hit it, move it and hit it. Yeah, that's a project.
Yeah, I was thinking, well, it's a small dent, it's a door dent, but I was
Sure.
thinking of starting off with a piece of wood, kind of rubbed back and forth and see where that goes.
And that's in the front fender, or is that in the door?
Front molding.
Okay.
The car itself has suffered some damage over the winter. It needs to go into the body shop to repair a dent on top, and it needs paint work and body work to fix that dent. In the meantime, I wanted to get these moldings off the car and repair them while it's in the shop.
Well, I'll tell you, anything that you can very carefully disassemble and pull off the car and save them the trouble of doing, even if they charge you for doing it, it's going to be a better deal.
Right.
Because when they go to put it back together, they're gonna use whatever fasteners they have. My experience with body shops is I don't, you know, let's just say they want to take I hate to be so horrible about body shops, but it's true. You know, they'll take the left front turn signal unit out of the bumper, right? And it's got a green wire and a red wire and a black wire. That's real straightforward. They'll cut them because that's easier, snip, snip, snip. And then they'll use Scotch locks and put them back together, and they'll put the red with the black and the black with the green and the green with the red. It's like, dude, look, if you can do this stuff yourself carefully, you gain a much better respect for your car, and it'll make it so much easier for the body shop guys.
Right. If I get this molding off the car first, I won't have a car that's finished with a piece of red paint on the molding when I get it back, you know.
Yeah. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
All right, next one up here, Marty. Marty's got a direct link to John's PayPal. Thank you very much, Marty. So that's in the chat section. Okay, we've got iPhone to everybody. My tachometer went crazy for a few weeks, then quit working altogether. Any suggestions? And who is iPhone? Our unidentified person with a crazy tachometer. We still have 184 people on, so you must be on. If you can unmute yourself and come on, otherwise, because we've got 62 MGAs with they don't have a 62A. Up through a 64B does not have a tachometer. It has a rev counter. Once it goes electric, then it's a tachometer. But before a tachometer, it's a rev counter. So let's assume that we're talking about a tachometer anyway, an electric, because that's the only ones that go crazy and then quit. So you've got one type of tach that's the large face through 67, and then you get a smaller face from 68 through 76. Then 77 through 80, you've got another tach. So there's 3 different tachs in the car. And the guts of those were made by Texas Instruments. They are repairable, but very few people will do that. I don't know if Nicensure is doing repair. I just saw an ad that made me think they were doing repair again, but I don't know. West Valley Instruments in California is the place. Very often they'll strip the guts out of there, put different guts in, and then ask you to hook it up maybe a different way. From 73 onwards, it's really easy to hook up any tach because there's a wire that comes off the correct side of the coil. Prior to that, there's an impulse loop, and it's a real bizarre way to run a tachometer, which is why they changed it. Anyway, without knowing anything more than that, I do know if it went crazy for a while and then quit, you got to send it in to have it repaired. It's nothing you can take care of yourself. The printed circuit in there, fascinating, looks like the inside of this $6 million man. Oh, right there, he says 79B. So in that case, you want to buy a used one. Just buy a used one. And there are a lot of places around. I'm partial to Sports Car Craftsman in Arvada, Colorado. They have a lot of good stuff there. Other people have got it too. You might go on eBay or some other place and look for a 79 tack, but they're all the same. So it's you take it, push it into the dash, rotate it anti-clockwise to about 10 o'clock, and it pops right out. It's really easy to install and uninstall from the dash. So, all right, so now we're going to go to Roger Zierman. You diagnosed my failed lifter and dropped rod at last year's workshop at Quality Coaches. Thank you. Swapped in a new motor since then. So that's Roger. Very, very cool. Failed. Yep. Failed lifter and a dropped rod. I've seen one of those. I put those up on the picture of that email that I sent out. John from North Carolina. I can't remember his last name. He drove all the way from here from North Carolina. At some point, the lifter, the bottom of the lifter failed, and the push rod itself was riding right on the cam lobe, which increased the valve lash enormously, but it still ran. Our cars run and run and run. They're such wonderful vehicles. Paul, please explain cam timing. Is the book right or wrong? Sort of. MGA 1500. Paul, are you on?
Yep, I'm here.
What's the thing?
Lining up the two gears. Do you put the dots together, or do you put the dot at 180, or do you forget about the whole thing and just throw it together and hope it runs?
No, yeah, you got to have it timed.
Right.
So the dot, because the crank is turning twice for every time the cam turns once.
Correct.
Out of every two turns, the dots are either going to be together or they're going to be both of them at 2 o'clock.
Right.
So it doesn't make any difference, but the normal way to do it is to put the two cam gears on the tabletop and put the chain around it in a straight edge and fiddle with it there.
Correct.
To get the gear in the right place, to center both wheels together and the marks in line with that. And then don't let it jump time. Don't let it to change a link, and just turn it until it lines up with the engine and put the engine back together like that. But when the dots are together, it's firing on number 4. It's like, okay, it doesn't make any difference. I mean, they're either here or they're here. I mean, is this wheel turns? It either lines up here or 180 to that.
Right.
It doesn't make any difference which way it is, because there are 2 top dead centers per motion of the engine. I mean, it's a 720 degree operation that the engine goes through. So you hit top dead center twice. I know I had people call me up and they say, oh my God, I put it together and then I looked at it and now it's 180 degrees out. What's going on? It's like, that's what it's supposed to do. That's just the way it is. But when you do go to set the distributor drive gear in place,
right,
make sure that you're putting it with large half uppermost with a horizontal, firing on number 1, and then it slides in and is pointed at the correct position.
Okay.
Okay,
thank you. Yep.
All right, Steve Shivington. Here we go, Steve. Steve from the greater Cleveland area. Actually, Steve's from Grafton, 44044, Ohio. Which particular lubricants do you use or recommend for the differential internal components when rebuilding and when you're doing an engine? The bearing shells and the wrist pins and everything. And what do you prime the oil pump with when reassembling? So Steve's been in the trade for as long as I have. I use that red assembly lube. I buy that. Is that lock? It would not obviously not Loctite. It's a red assembly lube. It's you pull your fingers apart. It's really, really sticky. I get that from Napa, and I use that. And then In the engine, I just easy right off the shelf at Napa is Valvoline VR1 2050, and that's got enough zinc in it. But the engine or the gearbox, if it's a T-type or a midget 1500, it takes GL4 gear lube, like 90 weight, GL4, used to be called Hypoid or gear lube. Now it's just referred to as GL gear lube number 4. There is a GL5, I suppose. Therefore, there's a GL1, 2, and 3. Some people say that if you use the GL5, it's got something in the composition of the oils, cleaner, I don't know, something or other, that maybe damage brass parts. Well, our gearboxes and differentials are filled with brass parts. So I defer to the GL4 90 weight. In the gearbox for the T-type and the midget 1500, and then just any kind of 2050 oil, cheap stuff for the gearbox. That's what the workshop manual calls for. John Esposito at Quantum Mechanics says, "Oh my God, no! You got to use 30 weight non-detergent in the gearbox, MGAs, MGBs, midgets." And then in the differential, you also use GL4, 8090. And then you also use that GL4 in the rack and pinion. And of course, I use it in the carburetors. So, and then just number 2, lithium, red grease, tops of it. So that for everything, sticking together everything. And I don't pack the oil pump, I just put oil on it. That's all.
Thanks, John.
Oh, hey, you're very welcome, Steve. So now we're down to Lee, everybody. Lee with a 57 MG. I did say where Steve was from. Yeah, Steve is from Grafton. So Lee, are you still on?
I'm here.
Okay, where are you from?
Houston.
Oh yeah, okay. What was the temperature there today?
I don't know. It was humid though.
I bet it was 7. Oh my gosh. All right.
70s or the 80s.
All right. So 57 MGA 1500, correct SUs, Pertronix electronic distributor, electric fuel pump, up to 180 degrees, the car runs good. Once the temperature exceeds 180, the engine starts to run rough and will die at idle and while running slow unless the choke is pulled out fully. Any ideas? Yeah, 2 things. One is the timing. The aftermarket Pertronic electronic distributors, the whole distributors, we don't know, you don't know what the advance curve is on it. Chances are it's not the same as you should have for your MGA. It'll work, it does work now, but it may be giving you the wrong advance curve or wrong advance timing spec at the wrong time. And that can affect overheating in the engine just dramatically. So you want to make sure it's timed at 32 before at full mechanical advance, vacuum disconnected. But it might be that it's way too advanced or it's way too retarded at 2000 RPM. You don't know. You should use the correct distributor for your car. And to get that, go ahead.
I'm in the I had. Oh, his name escapes me. He's up in New Hampshire.
Rob Medinsky.
Yeah, he just rebuilt my distributor, and I'm going to put it in and take out the Pertronics. I'm also going to change fuel pumps.
Fuel pump has no issue.
Why is it changing at 180? What's the heat got to do with it?
It has to do with the boiling gasoline. And what kind of gasoline do you run?
Premium.
Is there a chance that it hasn't got alcohol in it? Do you know?
I think it does have alcohol in it.
Yeah, alcohol boils at a real low temperature, not at 180, but more like 200 or 212 or something. You start to run into snags. So
Gasoline boils at 190, alcohol boils at 160. That's what the problem is in heat.
Okay, so Barney's got those two figures. And so it's, no, here's my background noise, and I'm not shutting Lee off, but I'm hitting mute all because I had some background noise. So Lee, you'll have to unmute yourself again. So it's the boiling gasoline. So how do you keep the gasoline from boiling? Well, if you have a grill like I've got, which is that mesh grill that if you're a real MGA guy, you say, oh my God, you can't put that in your car. It's not original. But let me tell you, it increases the airflow. When you go to an MGA meet and you see a row of 30, 1,500 MGAs and walk down and look at all the grills, some of them, the slats are like this. Some of them, the slats are like, I mean, they're straight up and down. Sometimes they're all in, just look at it. So what you can do is an experiment to see if it's an airflow problem by taking your car out for a drive, just seeing how it does, and then very quickly coming back, taking the grill out of your car. Oh joy! and driving it without the grill. And is there a dramatic difference? If there is, then either bend your slats or get the mesh, something like that. Joe Curto sells sleeves that go around the float bowls. They're not asbestos socks, but whatever, it's some kind of, R5000 something or other that goes around the bottom of the float bowls. That will help.
All right, and then I took out the 4-inch tube that goes to the heater.
Okay.
To put more air into the engine. Is that a good idea or does it matter?
I don't think it matters much. But I was going to call him Barney because Barney's the MGA guru. See what he's if he's got any tricks or hints.
Yeah, I got an answer for that. You better leave those air hoses in there. There's a big hose, the long one for the heater air intake. In front of the radiator, there's two short hoses that go down by the grill. The one on the heater side brings cool air up into the heater intake. The one on the opposite side brings cool air up to the carburetors. If you leave those hoses off, particularly on the heater side, but also the carburetor side, airflow is directed from the fan pushing air from front to back through the radiator, and there's a pressure difference. There's more pressure in front of the radiator, less pressure in the back. But if you get enough airflow from the fan and those hoses are not on there, the air can flow from behind the radiator back through those holes to the front, and you'll be recirculating hot air through the radiator. Not good. So if you're going to have to do a heater delete, run a car without a heater, you want to put a blanking plate over that hole on that side. And in any case, you want to leave the air hose for the carburetor on that side, coming down towards the radiator grill at the front, so as to prevent warm air from being pulled into there and pushed up by the carburetors, and also to keep hot air from being pressurized by the fan from being pushed back forwards through that hole in front of the carburetor or on the other side if you leave the hoses off. So you want to keep those hoses on there, and you want to put the felt pad underneath the bonnet as well to close the hole on top of the radiator for the same reason.
I have the felt pad and I will put that hose back in. Thank you.
So that's about it. And then of course there's this app you can get on your phone called Pure Gas, and it has different. It's got the filling stations around your area that sell non-leaded gasoline. If it's 5 miles away, hey, how cool is that? If it's 50, it's like it's not very realistic. So
well, that's when you take your gas cans with you.
Yeah.
John, instead of non-leaded, do you mean
non-alcohol?
Non-alcohol?
That's what I meant. That's what I meant. Pure gas. Yeah, not lead. There's no lead in the gasoline. No, it's no alcohol.
All right. Thank you much.
Okay.
We have a lot of corn in Illinois, and there's a corn component in politics. And if you're anywhere within 100 miles of a big city in Indiana, Illinois, or Iowa, you ain't gonna find pure gas anywhere.
I believe Wawa has it.
All right, we're moving on to David Sander. Any advice on what to watch for on an X-Bag camshaft? And the lifters were wearing out early. Well, there's an enormous, David, are you on?
Yes.
Okay, so, and you're from Massachusetts? Where are you from, David?
Vermont.
Okay, one of the 4 states I have yet to visit.
Really?
Yeah, really.
I can fix that.
Go figure, you know, but, so there's an enormous, well, first of all, those lifters are just so unbelievably huge and heavy. So when they get thrown up in the air or thrown up, you know, up by the cam, the springs on the cylinder head are to force them to follow the cam followers, follow the cam and not bounce or anything. So the valve springs are enormously strong. And if you were able to reduce that force of those springs, the lifters wouldn't wear as quickly because they're not being forced together that tightly. I've been after Tom Long to find some kind of bucket lifter, you know, for a T-type engine. You know, everybody will buy one, and then you can sell the push rods too, because the old push rods won't work. You know, get a bucket lifter. That's what the MGB did. It used to have this great big tall lifter. Is craziness, and then they went to the midget lifter, which is hollow on the inside. It's just as effective, and it weighs I don't know, about 1/10 as much, but it weighs dramatically less. Therefore, they could go to a much smaller spring on the head, and a single chain on the front of the engine too. So it just reduced the reciprocating weight and the weight you got to spin up when you're accelerating. I don't know why no one's come up. You got Len Finelli with a cam and all that exotic stuff. Why can't someone come up with a bucket lifter for a T-type and then reduce that spring tension? But anyway,
I know like 10 or 15 years ago, there was a lot of discussion on cutting a relief in the lifter so that oil would get in better. There was a belief that with the remanufactured camshafts and lifters, they weren't properly matched. So the lifter was actually sitting higher. So the oil passages weren't lining up, which was also creating the lifters to get stuck and not spin. I read a lot about whether the lifter was totally flat with a reproduction or whether it was skimmed and didn't have that slight disc shape to cause it to spin. There was also a discussion about the hardness of the lifter not being hard enough so that they were too soft. And of course the zinc and oil. A lot of stuff there, but you know, you talk to 10 people, you get 10 stories.
Yep. The bucket lifter is the way out. Someone wants a cottage industry that'll run solid for the next 10, 15 years. Start making bucket lifters for T-types. I don't remember the diameter is. I don't have my book out right now, but it's you just think. It was metric. I mean, the diameter is metric, but it just seems like somebody else ought to have something there. So anyway.
Do you do anything when you rebuild the next badge engine to worry about? No, just okay.
No. Open that light, you know, just when you run it in, you know, just make sure everything's like really, really loose when it runs in. 30 thousandths of clearance, and let the thing run for 20, 30 minutes. And then just hope that all those lifters are spinning. But I missed all that about cutting grooves in it, and so I understand how that would work. I understand that. So.
Well, I hope to see you in Vermont soon.
Hey, sometime soon for sure. Okay.
Thanks,
all right.
John.
Yep. And let's go down to another one here. We've got Just a minute here. Okay, I got Don Bartley. But I think, did you talk to us about that already, about the camshaft on that, Don? So Tom Booth, just a minute here. Does modern engine oil contain zinc, and what does it do for the engine? Yes, modern oil does contain zinc, but not enough of it. So Tom Booth, are you still on? Maybe he is. But then he says, I think Gerald Dalton just answered my question about the zinc. So anyway, the zinc protects the cam, and you have to have enough of it. And Castrol, when they changed, Castrol used to have, normal Castrol GTX had about 1,300 parts per million of ZDDP, and they reduced that to like 350. But now they've got, I don't know, Castrol Classic GTX or something. It's got the zinc in it again. So let's see. Here we got from Ian Wyatt from Ottawa. Are you still on? Ian.
Yes, I'm still here.
Okay, great. All right. So you worked on my red 74B in Ottawa last summer. Yeah, I remember that. You did your trick with a 10,000 feeler and isolated my tapping sound of valve number 2. I'm thinking of replacing the cam this year. What kind of skill level would you say is needed? I replaced the rocker assembly in the past, but that's the limit of my skills. Well, it's just, you know, the workshop manual's got every single step in it. It tells you exactly what to do in exactly what order. So, you know, read the workshop manual over and over and over and just say, hey, can I do this? You know, I don't know. You could read a medical journal over and over. Can I cut my kids, take my own kid's appendix out? After you read it enough, you convince yourself you could. So
I guess I'll give it a shot. I just didn't want to make it worse.
Yeah. Well, you just follow through the workshop manual. Really, that is the one of the trio of the books every owner needs. You got the driver's handbook that in the earlier cars tells you about the valve lash. Then you got the workshop manual that'll tell you how to change the cam in situ, or if you're younger than about 60, in situ. And then you got the parts manual, which is another essential part of any ownership. Some parts manuals are better than others. The original T-type parts manuals, they're not very helpful, and the very latest MGB manuals, again, aren't very helpful. But some of them in the middle are just dynamite. And there's such continuity on the MGBs that you can buy the original AKD 3227 factory parts manual on DVD, or find a copy of it on eBay or something or other. And it's just dynamite. I mean, it just shows you every single bit in the car. Now, if you've got a 1980, there's only so much that's the same, but half of it's still the same. You know, the windshield's still the same. It's amazing. Front suspension is the same. So anyway,
Okay. Thanks.
Read that.
Great, and thanks again for the work you did on it there last summer. That was great.
Hey, that was a lot of fun. I got invited to go up to Ottawa, the Ottawa MG Club, and right after the MGB
in Peterborough.
Peterborough, yeah, MG 22 in Peterborough. So I continued on up into Ottawa, and it's they're right next door. Canada's right next door. They sort of speak the same language almost all the time. It's completely intelligible. Their money's a little different, but it's a foreign country. The deeper you get into Canada, it really is. It's a lot of the stuff just isn't the same at all. It's a hoot. It was a real pleasure being there. So thanks.
Great, thanks. Okay, thanks.
All right, Greg Fisher. Here's the cam that was put in my engine. Just want to make sure it's a decent performance cam from these specs. 3 minutes, let's see, duration, 14,265. Yes, all right. Lift is 283 at the cam. Remember, the original lift is 250. So now the valve's opening farther. And the there's a thing about a base circle in a cam, and if we're taking a look at the cam, and the base circle is the back side of the lobe, not this part of it, but the base circle. And the larger that is, the less wear there is per square inch on that. So some of the T-type cams had a very tiny base circle originally, and now the cams that you buy for T-types, you've got a very large base circle. They almost look weird. So anyway, I don't know about changing the base circles on B series. They seem whatever they are. They almost always seem to be the same. So if I answered anything, Greg, for you, or we talked about this?
Yeah, you're good. I just wanted to make sure I did the right thing, because that's what I was trying to do.
Yeah. Well, if you just use, when you go to put it together, use lots and lots and lots of, you must have been supplied with some sort of paste that goes on the bottom of the lifters and on the cam lobes, and just get that really gobbed down there. If you didn't get enough, yeah, I'm sure you can buy it at someplace like Napa, maybe not right off the shelf, but they might have to order it or something, but assembly paste, zinc for the camshaft. So,
Hey, John?
Well,
yes.
The engine is completely reassembled. You can see it there behind me, but it's already been reassembled. So it's just a matter of me getting around to getting it put back in the car.
So one quick question on that. When you increase your lift, do you have to worry about your the little eyebrows on the block or on the heads so you don't have an interference?
In my whole experience of doing these, we had one time we had a situation where the valve interfered with the piston or with the head, the top of the deck once, and it was because the guy brought his own cylinder head, and the valve valve seats have been installed, and they were installed too low. So by the time you got done with the whole lift, the valve was pushing down too far. Beyond that, I've never had an issue with interference in those eyebrows that they started cutting in to the block at the 18V engines. That's a nice thing. That's a nice thing for all the cars to have.
That was mostly because they changed the size of the head.
Yes. Okay, we're on to Grand Pow about an ignition switch. So I only have Grand Pow.
That's me.
All right. Okay. All right.
Andy from Boca Raton.
All right. Nice. Regarding the ignition switch, what year and model do you have?
80 MG.
Okay, I was told the car will not start. You can attach alligator clips on the lower two fuses and start the car. Will this work until you can replace the switch? Well, yes. Obviously, the switch has to be off the column because it's a locking steering column. You can't drive it anywhere. But if you want to drive the car, if you want to start the car or run the car, first of all, you can take the electrical part of it out of the rest of the key assembly, put a screwdriver in it, and just use a screwdriver, with the rest of the steering column off. And if that's all falling apart or something, and you can't make the ignition switch, which used to be in the column, you can't make that turn to work, you can jump from the bottom fuse to the spade that takes the white wire on the relay in front of the fuse box. And that'll light the whole car up.
Okay, basically I was told, initially what happened was when I turned the car on, initially said, put the key in the car, turned it on, the radio would go on, and then I would start the car, radio would go off, and the car would start. Recently, I tried to start the car, nothing would work whatsoever. I had to jiggle around with it, and then it would start. I purchased a ignition switch, which I'm going to put on, but just in case of any kind of situation, I was told that if you just jumper the lower fuse, the lower two fuses, and turn this key, the car will start and run as a fail-safe type of situation.
Before 77, that's true, but not after 77. You have to energize the white circuit. The
white circuit.
The white, you got to get power to the white circuit. And I told you to jump over to the relay, and that isn't quite right. Just a minute. Anyway, just change the switch, and you don't have to have it all you have to do is plug the switch in, the new electrical switch, just plug it into the plug and use a screwdriver in it. Just a big blade screwdriver, and you can do what the key switch does.
Hey, John.
Okay, so basically,
hey, John, once you light up the ignition with a jumper wire from the purple circuit there on the lower fuse, you still have to run another jumper up to the red and white wire on the starter relay to trigger the starter.
Well, and the fuel pump won't run either, because it's a relayed circuit down to the third fuse. So you can get part of it operational, but you can't get the fuel pump going. So you gotta light up so there's a junction between the main loom and the rear loom at the right rear inner fender, right underneath the washer bottle, where all the washer solvent is. And there's a four-way Lucas connector that's got 3 white wires going into it right now. So you take a jumper from that to your bottom fuse. That will light up your whole ignition circuit. And the fuel pump. To start the car, and the fuel pump, yeah. And then to start the car, you pull off the white with brown wire off the relay, which sits to the rear side of the fuse box. That's the starter relay. You pull the white with brown off that, yank it so it's got enough length, and touch one of the clips that holds the bottom fuse. It'll spin the starter motor. Right. So you can do all that. But if you've got the switch in your hand, the new switch, just plug that in instead. So
right.
So if I plug in the new switch, I don't need the key. All I need to just do is stick a screwdriver in, and it'll start the car.
Right. And the reason I'm not suggesting that you leave it all assembled is because the key switch is heavy. It's going to be dangling down between your legs. So that doesn't make sense. Or you could temporarily just put it on top of the steering column, so yeah.
So at that point, you actually don't need the key anymore. You can just utilize jerry-rig it that way.
That's true. That's true.
Okay. Thank you so much.
All right, you're very welcome. All right, from Nick to everybody, I have Greg Purvis's 67 MG BGT Special. You and Greg rebuilt the engine and trans in the year 2000. Whatever warranty was expressed or implied is no longer operational. The trans has gotten a full rebuild while we put the car back together. It's getting pretty close to finish, and I'm wondering if you think the trans and overdrive need a rebuild, or do you think the engine does too? One of the reasons I paid what I did was because you two rebuilt those two components. No, that car hasn't, as far as I know, when Andy had it, he was just working on it. I don't think he ever drove it. And I don't think anybody else has driven that. So just offhand, no. No, just make sure the stuff's full of oil and run the engine in. Like I said before, I don't know how much, I don't know how much it's been run. I don't know anything. That was a long, I mean, help me out. That's 23 years ago. So Nick, are you still on?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, all right. So
So,
now
so you know, John at Quantum Mechanics, rebuilt the transmission while we were putting the car back together recently, and he said it looked like the car had a lot of miles on it, or the transmission had a lot of miles on it since you guys rebuilt it. So I was thinking, since that was rebuilt, does the engine also probably need to rebuild? Or
well, in the engine, if you do it all yourself, there's $2,000. If you hire somebody to do it, there's $4,000 or $5,000. Or you put it in and you just see if it satisfies your requirement, and if not, you pull it out next season and do it again. It's a lot of money to invest, and if you take it apart, every single thing you look at critically is going to be faulty. I mean, one of the cam followers is going to have some chipping on it. It just is. And you're going to say, "Oh my gosh, I should change all the cam followers. I should change the chain. I should change the tensioner. What about the oil pump?" Well, pretty soon you're doing the whole friggin' engine. So I'd put it in the way it is, and just and keep your fingers crossed. And if there's a lot of stuff you can do in place.
Okay.
Go ahead. Nick, I lost your audio on you. I lost Nick altogether. So he's there, but I don't see. Oh,
got it. Thank you.
Oh, now Nick's back.
Okay. I just want to thank you so much for the advice.
Hey, you're very welcome. Very welcome. All right, from GG Kerr. Comment on timing. I've been using 28, but get detonation at 32. Chassis dyno showed minimal gain over 28 degrees. Your 5 horsepower comment surprised the heck out of me. Well, it depends on the engine too, doesn't it? I mean, every engine is just a little bit different. And if you got the ability to go in there and determine that, yes, 28 degrees is your magic spot, then I guess it is. The proof is in the pudding. But when it's all factory stuff, that's where we found that it works the best. And somebody else was on here not too long ago and weighed in and made some comments about doing testing at different maximum advances and watching the air fuel ratio. Like, well, yeah, sure. If you got all that equipment, but my experience is that 32 is a fixed number. There are exceptions. Maybe you have one. Are you still on, Mr. GG?
Sir. CURL. It drops the L off the last off the name.
Okay. All right.
George Curl, Azle, Texas.
Okay. But if
it's 65 here right now. How's that?
Oh, hey, that's real nice. So can you stuff a sniffer up the tailpipe or something and watch the air fuel ratio?
If I do it on a chassis dyno, I can. I don't have a way to do that here.
Okay.
But I put my street car on the chassis dyno several times, the race car on a regular basis. So that's no longer with me. So I'm just playing with the street cars now.
Okay.
Have 67 BGT with overdrive, a 74 Roadster, a 54 TF, and a 1957 190 SL. So I'm car poor. They keep following me home.
Okay.
They follow me home.
Well, I don't know. Maybe it's the Texas sun or I don't know, different formulations of gasoline. I don't know. But if you've proven to yourself that 28 works the best, leave it where it runs the best, obviously. So
we get the fella in Houston's going to have a real hard time getting non-alcohol fuel.
Really?
Get it
Okay.
here by county, but the guy down in Houston is gonna have to go, that whole area down there, it gets alcohol fuel.
Okay.
So if you don't want it, you gotta go get race fuel. And that's $10 a gallon, so it's not worth it.
Well, that's it. It's always a balance. But if you can't drive your car,
Right.
anyway. But Barney had some ideas, and I had some ideas. So hopefully we can get there.
I think that was it. I do
Okay.
appreciate you. Thank you. If I have another comment come up, it's already been asked or already answered.
Okay. All right.
All right. Thanks, sir.
Yep. Thank you. Nick, apparently the guys putting it together have started the car. Haven't seen or heard it run yet. This is from a comment before. So anyway, that was all from Nick, and that has to do with that BGT. So I don't know much more. You can call me. I'll be happy to talk about it. I can probably find the file on it too. David Quinn. Last year I purchased an NOS Harmo muffler. How cool is that? I think it was designed more for racing than streets. Too loud. That's too bad. Just a minute. What do you think about putting stainless steel pot scrubbing pads into the tailpipe exhaust end? This does not have the factory downturn, so it would be easy to pack it that way. I don't know. I don't know. I wish that people still made mufflers that muffled. Gosh, I bought one for my MGA, and it was like a straight pipe motorcycle. It was horrible. And I got another one, and they're stainless. I mean, the stainless part of it's nice, but the original MGBs, they didn't whisper, but they had a sound to them. And the reason that you bought an ANSA system, which the last I think I talked to Moss, they don't even sell them anymore because the retail prices have to be $1,100 or something. You got this throaty sound. But now all the stainless mufflers are like really loud. It's frustrating. But the Harmo is the original aftermarket. That ought to be really quiet. I don't know how mufflers are made. I don't know. You take it to a muffler shop and get another. I mean, people used to talk about glass packs and all kinds of stuff. I don't know. I've seen MGAs with two mufflers like a B, and I've seen MGBs with one muffler like an MGA. I don't know about the stainless. I've heard people talk about that, taking a broomstick and pushing them way down inside. It seems like at some point it would restrict the flow of exhaust, but is that an issue? I don't know. So, don't know. Are you still on, David Quinn? Don't hear an answer here. We're down to 133 people. Here we go. I'm going to hit mute all because I've got some sort of reciprocal noise in the background. Thank you. Oops. Just a minute. I've got to get back to chat. Just a second. All right. Is there any way to make my dial back timing light work on my positive ground 59 MGA? I've tried using, but the RPM readout and the strobe light are erratic. Okay, well, there might be a couple of reasons for that, because the timing light doesn't care how it's hooked up to the high tension lead, this way or this way, although you can switch them and see if that makes a difference. But there's a red lead and a black lead, and you just observe polarity. So if it's not reading correctly, it might be because you got straight wires on from your distributor cap to your spark plugs. I got a noise here in the background. I'm going to try to get rid of it once more. There it goes. It's gone. And I know my timing light doesn't like straight wire. It likes to have a resistor wire. I don't know why, but it seems to work better with a resistor wire. So you can temporarily use a resistor wire or extend your existing solid wire with a resistor wire, just for the timing. So those are a couple of comments. So Dean, that's from Dean Wheeler from Kansas City. So those are a couple of ideas. Are you still on, Dean?
Yep, right here, John.
Yeah, okay. So the clip that goes on the power wire, you put it on this way, or you can put it on that way, right? One or the other. Shouldn't make any difference at all. And but what kind of wires do you think you have from the cap to the spark plugs?
To be honest, I don't know what they are.
Yeah, okay, all right. Originally, they're steel wires with a resistor at the end, but there's something about those timing lights that just love resistor wires. So
I've got
Hey, John.
got a standard timing light that works fine, but the dial back one doesn't work well at all.
okay, all right.
Did he try a different battery? Try a separate battery, not the one in the vehicle?
Okay,
I was told that can make a difference.
okay, all right.
I've
So
heard that before, but I'll give that a shot.
yep, pull your minivan up so it's kissing the MGA and hook the wires to the minivan. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Because 12 volts is an unusual number of voltage to get out of anything. So, yeah, except the storage battery. Okay.
Thanks, John.
Hey. Mike C. John mentioned 3 books you must have. I only had the 2. I just found the Midget 1500 parts catalog online, and boy, it has a lot of info that I could use. So that is a fact. The 3 books again are the driver's handbook, the workshop manual, and the parts manual. And if you buy a Bentley reprint, it's got the factory workshop manual and the owner's handbook combined. And some of the MGB ones have got Huffaker's tuning stuff in the background, that stage 1, 2, 3 stuff. And cooked. Any experience with a crack in the MGB cylinder head, dripping antifreeze in the spark plug number 2? I recently heard this is a common crack. Apparently, just an external crack. Solutions? Yes. Yep, absolutely. So you've got 11 studs that come up out of the cylinder block. They're all 3/8 of an inch in diameter. 10 of the holes around through which those pass in the cylinder head are 7/16. The one on the right-hand side between the number 2 and number 3 plug is 3/8. So the head pivots. The head pivots on that one stud. You push the gasket down. Gasket's this thick. You squeeze it. It becomes this thick, but it grows. So it grows towards it grows towards the stud, and you're pulling the head down, and the cylinder head gasket is bunched up around the stud. Therefore, the cylinder head gasket, instead of being flat, gets pulled down at the ends. So it's stressed. It's stressed at the middle, and it opens up at the top. It actually bends the cylinder head. And that's what keeps it high there. That's why it leaks, and that's why they crack. So the easy schmeezy trick is you get a chamfering tool, and you go on the underside of the head and just put a V. Not only at that one, you might as well put it on all of them. It takes just a moment to do. There's a lot of swarf you get, so of course you got to blow it off, make sure none of that gets down inside the engine. But just do that the next time the cylinder heads off, and that's it. Payen had an extra couple of strips of gasket material. The later MGBs, they didn't even put cooling holes over on that side of the block, trying to reduce that because that was a complaint. But as it turns out, if you chamfer it, then the cylinder head fits flat. I came upon that myself. You can argue with me. Somebody might even try to prove me wrong. I'd listen to them. But that's what I think it is. That's what I believe the solution to be, is chamfering those holes, and that obviates head replacement from a crack. So does that make sense, Ed? You're still muted. You got to unmute yourself, Ed. I see it. There we go.
Yeah. So it's not really a crack then. It's more of a leak out of the head gasket.
No, the cylinder head cracks.
Okay.
Right at that stud,
Yeah.
right at the one side or the other. It does.
see.
I'm sure it's because the thing's getting flexed.
I see. Okay, so no kind of like sealant, stop leak. Somebody told me you could use ceramic.
Oh,
coating.
sure, you can use stop leak. Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, sure. I mean, you always go through the easiest, cheapest solution.
I mean, you understand, I'm asking for a friend, right? It's not my problem.
John,
That's what everybody says.
All right, thanks, John. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
John, I used Bar's cylinder, was it cylinder?
Barsley.
Head gasket repair. It's in,
Okay.
comes in a gold. And I was out down on Cumberland, Maryland, and I had that water was coming out to pull out the spark plug. There's water shooting out at me. I put that stuff in. By the time I got to Baltimore, it had stopped leaking. I since changed the head, but for a good long while, it stopped the leak. It sealed it up. Bars is about the best product I've used. All their different.
Hey. Yeah, well, there's always a dollar solution, People say, oh my gosh, it all gets in the radiator, screws up the radiator. It's like, I'm 1,000 miles from home. I mean, if it works, I'm home free, So.
Well, Mr. Barr said after a while, the Bar's products dissipates and you don't find it anymore. It's gone. It's not going to plug anything up. I think I told you about the Nautilus submarine under the pole. They used the Bar stop leak and it didn't plug anything up. It just stopped the leak. So you're better off putting another head on. But in the meantime, that stuff really does work.
Yeah. Okay.
Does that work with the antifreeze, or do you have to get all the antifreeze out? Or
no, it works. You just make enough room to put it in. Read the jar, because in a small engine, I think you only use half of a jar. Get it at AutoZone or any of those places, and it's a head gasket sealer, and it does seals up that crack. But I don't know how long, because I've since gotten another head.
Yeah, that's good to know. Appreciate it.
I had a trick where I took 2 foot-long pieces of wire out of the lighter gauge. I'm muting all again. I don't know what's going on. And I take those the 2 individual strands, twist them together. I've got the spinning pliers. You'd make one long piece and then get it real straight, and put just a little dot of silicone on the top of the cylinder block, lay this thing into it right along the outside edge, then put the gasket on top of it, and then put the head on and tighten it down. That took care of it too, just by making this extra thick little area along the side of the gasket. But I do believe the reason that it was happening, because the top of the block is flat, the bottom of the head is flat. Why would it leak there? Because it's warping it. So anyway, okay, let's go over here to Dennis on his iPhone, who's talking about a clutch master cylinder. Dennis, are you still on? Oh, past 9 o'clock. So some people have dropped off. We're down to 123. Dennis, are you still there? Well, let's see, Dennis, can I install the clutch master cylinder on my 1980 MGB without completely removing the pedal box, hoping to just loosen the 4 bolts to gain enough wiggle room? Well, first of all, you can rebuild the clutch master cylinder in place. You don't need to take anything out except the push rod. Take the carpets out and use some 45-degree snap ring pliers. Take that cover off, and it's not the simplest thing in the world, but anything is easier than changing that master cylinder. And then if you do have to change the master cylinder, I don't remember having to take the box out, but it's dicey, getting those bolts off there, and then putting the new master cylinder on. You go through the bottom of the dash, up underneath through those rubber bungs. With a 5/8 socket on the end of a flex extension, take the banjo bolt out and drop the banjo bolt or the banjo fitting off the back of the master cylinder, and that's sandwiched between 2 copper washers. it's a real challenge to do, but sometimes you can just put a rebuild kit in there and you're home free. It's probably the later rebuild kit because it's a 1980 MGB. I mean, probably, but you never really know for sure until you take it apart. So anyway, that's the way we used to do it. And it would work for a good long time, unless the bottom of the cylinder was all pitted from having had a lot of water in it. So, well, let's see, from Paul to everybody, MGA parts book number 7, MGB part book number, MGA parts book. Barney, well, Paul, what year do you have? Are you still on? What year MGA? Because there's a 1500 book and a 1600 and 1600 Mark II book, parts
57.
book.
57.
57. So you need a fifth. What's that part number? AKD something, Barney, for the parts manual?
I'd give you about 1 minute to look it up.
Okay, but Barney doesn't have it in his head, but he's going to hunt it up. And the MGB GT, what year is that, Paul?
74.
74. So that is a normal.
Yes, it's a normal, an early. It was built in January.
Yeah, but that's the parts books change it at 77. So it's the earlier one. Those are I don't know who's got those all for sale in the United States. I know you can go to the MG Owners Club in England and get them on DVD. But if you go on eBay, I know you can find those things. Hey, Barney, you can come in anytime, Barney, because I have to walk away and grab my parts book if you found yours.
You're on mute, Barney. I can see your lips moving, but nobody can hear you.
I'm sorry, I'm looking at a different window and then you can't hear me. That work better?
Much better.
Okay. There's different numbers for different years kind of thing, and when they change the model slightly. I'll give you several numbers if you want to write them down. The first one for the early 1500 is AKD 599. That was first edition, June 55.
You got a later one on there too, Barney?
Barney, you keep going to mute.
Anyway, well, Barney's talking here. This is the AK. This is an AKM 0039. So this is the parts manual for the MGB that goes from the earliest ones through the latest ones. And these are like the Moss Motors diagrams in their book. You know, they've got every single part, but they're hanging in the air. And sometimes you don't know exactly where they go or how they're assembled. It's not as beautiful as the next one. I'm going to step away and get the other one. Maybe Barney's got another number.
Okay, you guys can hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. March 58, AKD 599. Did you get that one?
Yep, did.
Okay. June 58, AKD 599. I've got one for December 1960, AKD 1055, 1055.
Yep.
That's sort of a post-production print for the 1500 because they'd already gone to 1600s by then.
And here's for instance, here's a later one for an MGB or for an MGA. This is an AKD 3227. That's for 1600 MGA. And these parts books are so beautiful. They have every single. So
What was that, John? I didn't get the number.
Excuse me, this is a MGB. I'm sorry. This is MGB. AKD 3227. That's the MGB one. And I'll just open it up to a page, but here's the air cleaners. I don't know which, you can see this well at all, but it's so detailed. Every single little piece and how they all go together, which way the bolt goes. And you can look at the diagram and tell if it's a spring washer, an internal star washer, a factory washer. And then this is the AKD 1215, which is the for a later model MGA. And this has got, for instance, this has got the disc brakes in it. It doesn't have the drum brakes, but it's done in the same style as the one I showed before. And it's just they're so beautiful. They're so beautiful in their detail. So,
Okay, I got some more of these numbers on the MGAs.
Lost you, Barney.
Lost you, Barney. Come back, Barney.
There we go. How's that?
Okay.
Right, the last printing for 1500s was actually 1965, and it's AKD 5014. Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
This is after they're out of production, after the 1500s are gone.
Right.
There was get another one here. And then there's the, I got a twin cam book here. I got version 2, AKD 1296. And there's a version 3, AKD 1296. Click, hang on, there's one more. The MGA 1600, there's various versions. I think this one is probably a version 2. It's AKD 1215.
Yep, John showed us that.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, these things are on my website. If you want to go there, they're scanned and posted in PDF format, and you can just click on them and read them.
Okay. I didn't think they had them on this website. I'm usually pretty good at that.
Yeah, there was a lot of factory support. I mean, like Barney said, that the last parts manual printing he has for a MGA 1500s 1965. This is almost 10 years after it's out of production. And those later ones, they'll tell you that this part is no longer supplied and use instead this part. You know, it's they're really handy, especially for reassembly.
Yeah, they're very detailed. They tell you when they change the part number to another one. And like if the first number is not available, use the second one and stuff like that. And even after they went from like 1500 to 1600, they were still changing part numbers for service parts. And that detail is in there. It tells you which car numbers the change was made at and the dates.
So this is right up Fred's alley, because Fred likes to keep track of what's original on the cars. So
thank you.
But they're not always correct. That's the other thing. It's just like they're almost, I mean, 99.99% of the time they're right. But in the MGA workshop manual, it shows you the fuse box on the firewall, and it's upside down. So there's just only, you know, and it's only, you're only using them for reassembly anyway, because the parts suppliers don't use these part numbers anymore.
There are some errors in these workshop manuals that are pretty egregious. Like they showed the bolt for the rear transmission mount in from the wrong side. And if you put it in that way, you can't get the gearbox out of the car. You have to push the bolt out, cut the head off of it, push it out, buy a new bolt.
Yeah, they tell you to put the slots on the thrust washers towards the bearing cap instead of towards the crank in one of the versions. There's just a lot. There's just stuff. They found errors, but they corrected them as time went on. Let's keep going here. I got a couple more to do because we're at 9:15. Steve, you mentioned a fuel bowl insulator. Where can I get them? And what do they look like? They're little sock kind of things. You buy those from the Carburetor King, Joe Curto, C-U-R-T-O, Joe Curto in College Point, New York, which is Queens. he sells those. Now, I don't know, maybe Abington Spears has them for sale too, or Moss, I don't know. But I know Joe makes them, so.
Okay, thank you.
David Quinn, John, I was online and heard your answer. Thanks. I cannot figure out how to fire up the video and reply. Never tried on Zoom anyway. Thanks for 50 years of advice. David, you're very kind. Thank you. Robert Davidson, good thing Dennis is not doing a 68 through 74 cylinder. I've seen your rebuild of that one. That's from Robert. And I've got this funny noise in the background that I'm muting again. Thank you. I don't know where that comes from. Tom to everybody, try books for cars. Books in the Arabic numeral 4, cars.com for manuals. Huge selection, says Tom. So books for cars. So
yeah,
hey,
this is Tom. It's pretty amazing the stuff they have. I mean, if you want a manual for a 1956 Mercedes Unimog, they have it, and they have tons of MG stuff.
Okay.
And they have not only manuals but books, and the manuals are reprints and originals.
Okay. Yep, I'm more of a book guy. I mean, you can buy a parts manual on a DVD, but you want it out in the shop. You want to put your fingers on it. So yeah, and there's parts manuals for everything. You know, for the dedicated SU parts manuals, dedicated Lucas parts manuals. I mean, you can. If any of you've seen the pictures that Marty's put up of my new library, you can see that I've got lots of manuals, lots of books. Oh my gosh. Well, anyway, it's 9:30, so I want to thank everybody. We got 100 people on. Doug Clark, are you on tonight? Are you doing your official counting, Doug Clark?
Yes, John. Hi. I counted 185.
Oh my, all right. Like the one time I looked, I got 178, so 185. And this is for Doug. This is my, I've done this before, but so I brought a pith helmet, especially for Doug. So, so this is the one that I wear at the summer party, as infrequently as I have them now, but we're supposed to be one later on this year. So, anyway, I want to thank everybody for coming on, and I want to encourage you to go to the website, my website, universitymotorsltd.com. and find the yellow PayPal button and say, geez, thanks. You know, that really was helpful. Anytime I had somebody give me some cash actually at the Chicagoland MG, at the British Car Swap Meet. He said, I don't do PayPal, but thanks a lot. Gave me $20. It was very kind. So some people sign up, and I get a little tiny bit of money each month, and some people make individual donations, and I appreciate them all. Thank you very, very kindly. So that's about it. Next place I'm going to be is in Minneapolis. I think that's my next meet, and I don't have a flyer on that, but that's a Mark Brandau's shop called Quality Coaches. So if you're from northern Wisconsin, northern Illinois, Iowa, the Dakotas, or Minnesota, that's a fun weekend. It's a technical seminar. I'm not sure what we're doing yet. Sometimes it doesn't make a lot of difference. It's just fun to see all this stuff happen. So anyway, Mark's got a nice shop up there, puts on a nice show. So I'll be up there. I think that's my next official event. In the meantime, I'm going to try to get some work done in my shop. So.
What's Barney's website address to get the information on those manuals?
MGA Guru, GURU.com, MGAGuru.com.
All right, thank you.
Barney's got, how many pages you got up, Barney? 4,300 pages of stuff?
5 years ago, it was over 4,000. It's still growing.
Okay, so anyway, it's if you got MGA, it's Barney's site's obviously exceptionally helpful. If you got a B, sometimes there's stuff on there that's the same. Barney does have 4 or 5 pages, or I don't know how many pages there are, but lots of pages there of shops. You know, people call me and say, I'm in East Frozen Sneaker, Iowa. What's the closest shop I can take my car to? And I say, go on Barney's site and take a look, because Barney's got a list of all the shops that he and Elliot drive every day, go someplace else. Where are you today, Barney?
Hey, I'm still in Wheaton, Illinois. I haven't moved
Okay.
out of town yet. Probably be in Indiana tomorrow.
All right, okay. So he and his son Elliot are always in the MGA and with a camper behind it, or a little pull trailer behind it, and they travel the USA looking at MGAs and looking at shops that work on British cars. So anyway.
John, you have one more question that
Yes.
came up in the chat.
Oh, I do. Oh, quality coaches.
No, but there's a question too.
Above that? Oh my gosh, it's a great big long one. I'm working on a 66 midget to give to my granddaughter for in high school. Came without an engine or a gearbox. Aside from the floorboards, pretty much rust free. How nice is that? I've since purchased a 1500, a 1098, a B1800 engines. 1275s are hard to find. So, and I want to build an engine that will work for her and not waste dollars on. So the 1098 engine is the one that fits in there. Absolutely, you don't want to change. You want to put a Volvo engine in, or an MGB engine in, or a midget, a Triumph 1500 engine in there. I don't exactly, but just get the right stuff and start looking around some more. There's a vast supplies of British car parts, especially in the West where it's so dry. Sports Car Craftsman is nice. They're in Colorado. There used to be somebody down in Arizona and New Mexico had a couple hundred cars. Yeah, you can get stuff from the East Coast too. You know, it's just the shipping starts to climb up a little bit more. There's the North American MGB Register, which has a midget registry within it. You can always contact them. There's always people looking for sale. And there are search engine tools that you can use to expand your search on Bring a Trailer or Hemmings or Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist. You can look for whole regions. Although once it gets to be 1,000 miles, it's like you can really drive that far to do it. But the 1098 engine's just fine. That'll do. It'll work great. So 1275 is nicer, but the 1098s are okay. There are two different 1098s. There's a 1098 CC, which is the later one, and the 1098 CG, which uses side covers like an MGB engine does over the lifters. Anyway, but go for a 1098 or a 1275. So, and Marty put down the dates of that Minneapolis event, which is May 6th, May 7th. So that's about it. Anybody got any other notes, comments?
John, I think with our dueling helmets here, we're separated at birth, so to speak.
Oh yeah, you got yours on too. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. 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 Okay. All right.
How pithy.
Yeah.
Thanks, John. Good times.
Hey,
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John, and good night.
And
Thank you, John.
Save your money on your card, John. Get a camera for your your laptop. Good night.
I'm gonna order it tomorrow.
See you later.
Doug, that was a great swap meet. Enjoyed it.
Yeah. I walked in as you were walking out. That was good. Thanks. Glad you made it.
We were just taking stuff to the car and went back and bought some more.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
That's
I appreciate your keeping the local MG economy afloat.
Yeah, we did.
We did. Unfortunately, we did.
Now we have to figure out how to put everything on.
Marty, thanks a lot for coming and helping out. So And Barney, thank you for weighing in from Wheaton and about the MGA stuff. It's always helpful. So, and George Barberi, didn't hear from you this time, but I see your name on there. Dean Wheeler, is very nice to talk to you. So it's time that I got to hit the goodbye all button instead of the mute all button. Anyway, thanks a lot, everybody, very much. And if you got any questions, just call me. I'm happy to give you my comments and from my experience, so forth. So anyway, till then, thank you.
Thank you, John. Good night.
Good night, John.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night, all.